Locho sampo pa gyu trashi pa tuche tempe trinle yarngo da pege drolor zambe tse parache palden lame shabla solva de Omo a guru vajra dara sumatimo nisha sane karma uta vardanya shri bar Varsa manya sarva siddhi hum. Om guru vajra dara sumatimo nisha sane karma uta vardanya shri badra varsa manya sarva siddhi hum. Om guru vajra dara sumatimo nisha sane karma uta vardanya shri badra varsa manya sarva siddhi hum. Om guru vajra dara sumatimo nisha sane karma uta vardanya shri badra varsa manya sarva siddhi hum. Om guru vajra dara sumatimo nisha uta vardanya shri badra varsa manya sarva siddhi hum. Dagi jetsun lama tuje che nyamda dala tuje siksu so gebe shesan dala tendo so uyon sunge na wa tsedo so tseje nine so wa debe tse dejen korlo viso lekshun Yela sambe dede male ba geme lunge drubra jinge lo tsonyi sodan digdun shabe tse dunge namge yinsu lekshun Labchen tsonyi yonsu zoba dan chera nyedun chamra jinge lo Chanchu parge nyinsen tukun tu nyu peme siru lekshune Chanchu drube gegen kun shishi tungen de la drubra jinge lo Dagi lo na chela chopa dan chemi samchur ngenpa shiwa dan Chedan tumbe dede malu pa beme lungi drubra jinge lo Dorna tingne tsirao tamche dan techi pardu negaw tamche tu Rese kyamne lama kele me tukche chingi dala siksus Gongyab drewe nyamda dajala jetsun lame tuje rabgongne Kudan sunge nawa drame tu nyamsu nyongwe kesan tobrasho Kewa kundu yanda lama dan drame cheki pela longche chi Sadan lamge yende rabzone dorje change koba nyur tobasho Pakyuke kudan dagi lu, pakyuke sundan dagi nga, pakyuke tukdan dagi ten yerme chiktu jingi lu. Makyuke kudan dagi lu, makyuke sundan dagi nga, makyuke tukdan dagi ten yerme chiktu jingi lu. Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakya Muni Swaha Mahamuni Shakya Muni Swaha Om Muni Mahamuni Shakya Muni Swaha Sangye chedan soge chanam la jancho pardo dani kyapsu chi Dagi jinso gibe sonamgi, drola pinchira sangye drupa resho, sangye chedan soge chonamla, chancho pardo dani kyapsu chi, dagi jinso gibe sonamgi, drola pinchira sangye drupa resho, Sangye chedan tsogi chonamla chancho pardo dani kyapsu chi Gibe sonam ge drola pinchira sangye druparasho. In the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. One very important thing that we have been seeing these days is that when there is something that is certain, it's important for us to deal with it, to look at it, not to leave it as just as if it didn't exist. But I was thinking about why often we relate to death as something that didn't exist. And I believe that one of the reasons is that when we have something that is a certainty, but at the same time we have no idea how to deal with it, we prefer to say, okay, I just wait, whenever it comes it will come, but in the meantime there is nothing that I can do about it. So I just wait for it to come. In the meantime I will live just as if it didn't exist. And this is something that I think sometimes we do about death. We just go on forgetting, not forgetting, but deliberately acting as if it didn't exist, as if we would not die, because we have no idea what we can do to prepare ourselves for our own death, and to prepare ourselves for the death of others, and how to help and all of this. So based on that, actually it is possible to do a lot. There is a lot that we can do in order to prepare ourselves for our own death and also to deal with the death of other people. One of the aspects that is important is that of understanding better the process of death, because in the moment that we understand better the process of death, then we can get more acquainted with it, we can understand better what will happen, and then we can understand better also based on that what can be done in relation to it. Okay? So this is something that we have seen yesterday. We saw the gross process of death, the subtle process of death, the gross process of death with 4 steps, which is as the earth dissolves into water, the water dissolves into fire, the fire dissolves into wind, the wind dissolves into the space of consciousness. Then we had a subtle death, which is the white vision, red vision, black vision, and clear light. And clear light being the actual moment of death. If we need to point a finger and say, where is the actual moment of death? What is death? That's when the very subtle body and mind gets out from the indestructible drop. The indestructible drop is basically what is created in the moment of conception through the union of the sperm of the father and the ovum of the mother, when they join together and the very subtle body and mind that is wandering through the Bardo gets trapped into it. Okay, but we will see this process a little bit later. But that's the indestructible drop. When the indestructible drop that started in the moment of conception opens, and the mind and body is ready to go out of the body, that's the moment in which we define the actual death. So I'm not going to go through again what we have already seen yesterday. And we need to go on with the next 2 steps, which is understanding the Bardo and understanding rebirth. Once we understood the process of death, the process of the Bardo, and the process of rebirth, then we can go through the practices of how to transform and how to meditate on these processes, which are called basically the 3 transformations and the 9 mixings. Okay, so now let's go directly to the point. Otherwise, if I go on through a too long introduction, then I get lost within the introduction, and then we have too many things to assist you today and tomorrow. So let's go to the next part. The next part is once that we die, right away, what develops is the so-called Bardo. Okay, there are many ways of explaining the Bardo, and normally the Bardo is explained within the context of the process of death and rebirth and so on. But I would like first to give a more general explanation. First of all, Bardo means intermediate state. Bardo means that which exists between two things. So basically, our existence is a cyclic existence. Also in this life, we're not talking only about death and rebirth. We're also talking about many different things that happen in our own daily life. So we have cycles, things start, and then as they start, sooner or later they will end. When they end, there is a new cycle that will start. But between the end of the old cycle and the beginning of the new cycle, there is a period in between. This period in between is called the intermediate state. It's called the Bardo. And we have like so many Bardos in our lives. So many Bardos. And the Bardos, they have a very powerful characteristic, which is the Bardo is the moment where we can change direction very easily, very quickly, and we have many, many, many opportunities in front of us. And we can actually go to one or to the other. It's like I finished one cycle, before entering to the new cycle, I have many opportunities. But once I enter to the new cycle, I need to finish that cycle in order to open another one again. So if we make just some examples, let's say I have one work that I am doing. At one point, that work finished. I finished doing that work. When I finish that work, before opening a new one, I have this period in between. I have a relationship. The relationship ends. Before I start a new relationship, there is a period in between. I am living in one place. When I stop living in that place, before I go to live to another place, there is a period in between. We can make hundreds and thousands of examples. Basically, what happened is that when I finish to live in one place, I sell the house, I'm not there anymore, or I finish with a job, or finish with a relationship, whatever. Finish with something. Then, after that, I am in a moment where I can have many choices. Let's say I have in front of me 10 possible new houses that I can go. Or I can have 10 new jobs. Or I can have many other possibilities independently of what type of Bardo we are in. Okay? But when we are in the Bardo, we can, with very little effort, we can go from one possibility to another possibility. We can change direction very easily. But once we take the new direction, then we need to finish that cycle before we can change it again. It's like when I am without a job and I have many possibilities, I can choose. Do I want to go to make sandwich? Do I want to work as a cleaning person? Do I want to work in an office? Do I want to go to live in the woods with little money that I have kept aside? What do I want to do? I have many possibilities in front of me. Many, many possibilities. But once I start a new job, then all the other doors are closed until I don't close this door again, until I don't finish this cycle. Okay? Similar thing is I need to buy a new house, I can need to choose where to go to live. I have so many possibilities in front of me. But once I choose a new house, then I need to sell that house again in order to make a choice again. I have no possibility just to choose again. So what happened is that it is said that during our life, it's like if we are in a big boat in the ocean. And this big, big boat, we have like a big ship. In order to change direction, it takes a lot of effort. It's not like 90 degrees turn. It's like slowly, slowly turning on the ocean in order to make the change of a direction. While when we are in the Bardo, to change direction is like a small boat, like a small canoe. In a canoe, you just make a small movement and you change direction right away. Okay? Which is in a way very good, in a way not so good, because it means if you have a change of wind, a change of current, whatever, you can change direction very easily. So when we make the choice, then actually we took the direction. Then actually we get the rebirth. But between that, we have many possibilities. What happens often to us is that we enter into the Bardo And sometimes we are too much attached to the previous life. So we want the next life to be just as, or we want to go back to it. And then we get blocked in the Bardo, which we are not in the previous life, and we are not able to take a next rebirth because we get blocked in between. And this can last short or long periods. Or it can happen also the fact that we are so fixed in what type of rebirth we want that we do not open ourselves to the other possibilities. And then sometimes we can get stuck into that also. Okay? So one important aspect of the Bardo is the fact that it's a space in time of opportunities. It's a beautiful opportunity actually. The Bardo is not something necessarily negative. Okay? It is actually a place and a space of opportunities. It's exactly where I finish something, what I do next. Even very, very simple things. I wake up in the morning, I finish washing myself. What I do now? There's a small Bardo there. I can meditate, I can read the news, I can go to Facebook, I can have a walk, I can go back to bed, I can do many things, okay? I can do my duty, I can forget about my duty. We have many Bardo, we have many choices in between. But once we make a choice, we start making something. Before we don't finish it, we cannot start making something else again. So, there is this period in between, which is actually very precious. And this is basically the Bardo that we have, this intermediate state that we have in between. Okay? And just first we need to understand these characteristics of intermediate state. That intermediate state is something that starts as soon as the process of death finishes. It can last a very short period of time or a very long period of time. And in between that is a space of opportunities. The way how the first opportunities that appear to us, the way how we live the Bardo, it is strongly conditioned by the way how we died. If I end up a relationship, if I finish a job, if I leave a place with a peaceful state, with an angry state, with expectations, without expectations, it depends the way how I end something, it will direct me to the Bardo anyhow. Then in the Bardo I can change direction later also. But initially it will make this difference. Okay? So this is one of the aspects. And so the Bardo is something actually very, very important also. In life, generally speaking. And we need just to remember that we experience many Bardos during our life. Every day. All the time. And are these moments, they are very precious. Very often we are not aware of them. Simply because we are too much fixed to where we want to go, or we do not accept that one cycle is finished. It's like if I die, but I did not accept my death, so I remain attached to my previous life, but it's not actually my previous life. Okay? This is sad. There are some people that they die, but they are so attached to something of their previous life that they are reborn as a spirit that has a similar aspect of the previous life and is attached to it. But it's like if you recognize yourself in your previous life, but you are not alive anymore. Okay? If we use this, which is not necessarily a metaphor, it's a fact that can happen. But if we use it as a metaphor, sometimes in life something finished, but we don't accept that it's finished. So we remain in a state where we are not actually living it anymore, but we are not also going forward because we are not accepting that it has finished. So we live as if it was there, but actually it is not there anymore. So it's this really difficult intermediate state in which we do not accept that we are in an intermediate state, but we remain trapped into it. I don't know if this is clear. Okay? So, once we have a death, then we enter into the Bardo. And it is a precious moment. And it's important to accept that death has happened in order to open ourselves to possibilities and not to be necessarily, it's important to have a direction, but not to be too much fixed in what we need to do. Because sometimes the opportunities are not there, and by not having the opportunities exactly for what we want, we block ourselves for other opportunities, just making to one example. One friend, two friends actually, they had good jobs, everything okay, very good career, working in two completely different type of jobs, but both of them had a very good career, wonderful knowledge and so on. And then it happened at one point in their life that for whatever reasons, both of them lost their job. Okay? Different conditions, different situations, but what happened is that at one point, they both lost their job. But what happened is that as they lost their job, they both went to a situation, okay, now let me enjoy a little bit time of freedom. They say, okay, I want to enjoy somehow this Bardo. But they both had very fixed ideas that they wanted to go back to the same job with a different name in a different place, but they wanted the same. So what happened is that after some time they said, okay, now let's go back, and they start looking for jobs, but they both could not get it. So the time was passing, and they both didn't get a job. 1 year, 1.5 years, the time was passing, and they couldn't get a job. The money was finishing. What I do now? And then starts to get difficult. But both of them, they were fixed in the same type of job. They wanted to be reborn in the same life they had before. And at a certain point, they gave up, and they opened themselves to other opportunities. So one of them started making bread, because he needed money to pay his bills, and he didn't know what to do, really. So finally, he had this idea, I will make bread in the little oven in his house. And he was making like bread without gluten, whatever, in between the friends helping. And he made it very nice looking and this and that. And finally he started selling one bread here. And he was happy with it finally. So he went out of that energy of frustration and being fixed with only one possibility. And he relaxed and opened himself to other possibilities and put a nice and joyful energy. And he was not so much attached anymore to the previous life. And as soon as this start working better, then he was called for the job that he wanted so much. That was the type of job that he used to do before. The other friend, a similar situation, very specific type of job, very successful and so on, very good credentials, no job. Then one time he just forget about it, relaxed about that, say, let me do something else, and start doing something that had nothing to do really directly with his job, even though he used his knowledge also to do this new job, which was recycling some glass and making some things of art and things like that. Anyhow, making some beautiful cups and glasses out of recycled bottles and very beautifully made and so on. Doing something that was joyful, that was positive, and putting energy in somewhere which was possible. And then as soon as this energy started to move, truly, it didn't take much time, then he got a job that he wanted even more than what he would expect. So what is happening is that when we remain in a Bardo with this energy of, this is when we fixed too much into one thing, and we don't open to possibilities, and we don't put our energy to run, then we get stuck. When we are too attached to the previous life, we are not able to get a rebirth, and sometimes we get stuck into that. In the moment that we accept that the cycle is finished, we'll say, okay, this life has finished. I open myself to a new possibility truly. That's when actually the possibilities come to us, because we are open for them. Okay? And this is something that happens in our daily life all the time. Even when it's like, when we finish doing something and what we had programmed to do is not possible, then we don't know what to do. Because we don't open ourselves to the possibilities, because we are fixed in our ideas. So when we do not accept a death, difficultly we will open ourselves to the new possibilities. So to accept the Bardo is important. Which means I accept that something finished, I open myself to the new possibilities. Okay? So, once the process of death is concluded, we enter what is called the Bardo. No? And as we said before, we have the Bardo can be seen in many different ways. which is the bardos that we have during our lives and so on, many moments in between. No? But now let's see the bardo as intended as the specific moment, period between death and the rebirth. Okay. So what happens technically is that in the moment that the indestructible drop opens, there is clear light. And right away after clear light, one is reborn within a state of the bardo. To understand better that, one of the things that we need to go through is the understanding of the process of dreaming, which is not the same thing, but is extremely similar. So, when we dream, what happens is that first we go into deep sleep, and as we fall into deep sleep, from one moment we are still in the process of falling asleep, and then we enter into this sleep, there is like total darkness, nothing, no consciousness, no awareness of anything. And then suddenly there is what is called the clear light of the dream, of the sleep. And then after that, suddenly it's like if we wake up inside the dream. So when we wake up within dream, do we have a body of the dream? Yes. Is the body of the dream necessarily the same one as we have when we fell asleep? No. We can have a body of the dream, can be more young, can be more old, can be a man, can be a woman, can be tall, can be short, can be a monster, can be a bird, can be anything, no? Okay? But there is a body of the dream. The state of the dream, it's a whole reality. We have an environment, we have a place, there is other beings that we relate with, and so on. The state of the dream doesn't develop in a gradual way. It's not, okay, first I am born and then gradually I will get older. No, it's like we suddenly appear at a specific moment. Boom. Okay? Similar to that, when entering into the bardo has the same characteristics. The bardo is a state where there is a body of the bardo. In Tibetan it's called the yilu. Yilu is the same also when we are dreaming, which is called the body of mind, or the mind body. Okay? For instance, when we are dreaming, we can see, we can listen, we can touch, we can even smell and taste. It's more difficult to have dreams where we have the awareness of smelling and taste, but this is still possible. Okay? So what happens is that we have the senses, but for example, when we are in a dream, and we are actually seeing and listening and tasting in a physical form. Is that happening? Are we actually really listening to that things and really tasting that and so on? No. We are doing that with our mind body, with the body of the dream. Okay? So, in a dream we can have all these experiences, but they are not happening in a physical state. Okay? It's a mental process that we are going through, but we can actually have these experiences very clearly. The bardo is extremely similar to that. Okay? So, when we enter into the bardo, it's just like waking up within a dream. So it's like there is death, and then suddenly there is a small rebirth within the bardo. So we enter into a state. As most of the times when we dream, we are not aware that we are dreaming. Similar to that, most of the times, most of us are not aware of the bardo when we die. So we just enter into this state. The being of the bardo has some characteristics. One thing I forgot to say before I forget again. The teachings of the bardo, where are they coming from? The teachings of Buddha, we have different categories, let's say, subjects that we divide Buddha's teachings of the sutra, which is we have logics, there is the gradual path to enlightenment, which we call perfections, there is the teachings of the correct view of reality, Madhyamika, there is the Abhidharma Kosha, which is like the part which is like describing the mind and cosmology and so on, and then there is the monastic vows Vinaya, okay? So all the explanations regarding the process of the bardo and so on are described inside the Abhidharma Kosha. So this is which is like some sort of collected works.
So inside these teachings, inside these teachings, there is the whole part which explains how the world was created and the description of the elements, and then is the part which describes the mind and so on, and then there is the part which describes the Bardo, okay, inside the Abhidharma Kosha. So this is where we make reference to. So the explanations of the Bardo that I was just starting to give, and then we'll have reference on that. There is one text which is well known in Tibet, and I think it has become even much more well known in the West than in Tibet itself, which it was translated as the Tibetan Book of the Death, and the Tibetan Book of Dying, or the Tibetan Book of the Death, and which the name in Tibetan is Bardo Tödrol. Bardo Tödrol, Bardo means the Bardo, this intermediate state. Tö means listening, Tröl means liberate. So, which means the text that liberates from the Bardo just by listening to it. So this is something that within the Gelupa tradition is not part of the tradition. So we do not follow this text inside the Gelupa tradition, as because we do not believe that just by listening to a text, the one that is dying can be liberated from the fear, from the death, from the Bardo itself, okay? I believe that the original context of this text, it means by understanding it and so on, you can liberate yourself from the Bardo, not just by listening. But this is just my own interpretation. I have no enough knowledge to truly talk about it. The fact is that inside the Gelupa tradition, we have the whole part in which we refer to the Bardo, which is mainly related to the Abhidharma teachings. Okay, that's where it's being described, the process of the Bardo. Okay. So the Bardo is extremely similar to the process of dreaming. The being of the Bardo has a subtle body, which is there is no gross body. But what happens is that in the process of death, gradually, as we saw yesterday, as we die, we will lose our part of sensation, discrimination, compositional factors. The 5 aggregates slowly lose us. They shut down. And we lose them. In the Bardo, we have the 5 aggregates of the Bardo again. Okay? It's like, for example, when we are dreaming, do we have the body of the dream? We have the sensation of the dream. We have discrimination in the dream. We have the compositional factors of the dream. And we have the consciousness of the dream, which are different than when we are awake, okay, as perception. Similar to that, during the born process of the Bardo, there is an aggregate of form, there is a body of the Bardo, there is sensation of the Bardo, there is discrimination in the Bardo, there is composition of factors, and there is consciousness, okay? So the 5 aggregates of the Bardo are there. That's why when the Bardo is a small rebirth, when the person dies and is reborn in the Bardo, okay? It's not normally called rebirth because, it's like a small rebirth, like an immediate, spontaneous rebirth within the Bardo. Normally we say that the Bardo can last up to 49 days. The reason for that is that it's said that the being that is living in the Bardo, first of all, the being in the Bardo doesn't make distinction between day and night, cannot perceive the difference of day and night. And it is said that only those that have the white and red bodhicitta can actually make distinction between day and night. So only those that have a physical body, such as ours, which was made by the union of the energy of the father and the mother, only this type of beings can actually make the distinction between day and night. The other beings makes no difference if there is light or darkness, and it's all the same. Okay, no distinction between day and night in the same way as we have. So, one day of the Bardo, which is like one life of the Bardo, can last up to 7 days of ours. It's similar like, okay, in one night, how many dreams can we have? More than one? Yes, no? I remember having in one night more than one dream, and sometimes even we ask, how many dreams did you have this night? I had 3 dreams, I had 2 dreams. But I never knew anyone that had like 25 dreams in one night. So I would make the analogy and say that in one night we could have maybe maximum of 7 dreams. As it says that in the Bardo, we can have a maximum of 7 lives of Bardo. We can have a maximum of 7 Bardos, one after the other. Okay? Each Bardo can last up to 7 days of ours. And when it finishes, there is what is called the small death, which is the Bardo being dies and is reborn into another Bardo. It's called a small death because it's immediate, it's quick. But it's similar like when we go from one dream to the other. It's like one dream finishes, boom, and that's just after we appear into another dream. But it's something that happens extremely fast, extremely quick, but it's 2 different realities. Like we can have the most crazy dreams. I have had the most crazy dreams, and I remember clearly now one dream in which I was in one place which looked like in Tibet with some people I knew from monastery up and down, and suddenly I came out from this context and I went walking through the fields which looked like India. Then suddenly I was in a city that looked like Rome. And I was meeting one person that I knew was a person I knew in Brazil, but was younger than the way how I knew the person. Crazy things of dreams, okay? Dreams are just crazy. But what happened is that case, it was like more than one dream in one, but was the same dream because there was the awareness of from the beginning to the end, different realities within the same dream. Another thing is that one dream ends and then suddenly starts another dream. Okay? This is like in the Bardo, when we can have one Bardo, different experiences within one Bardo. But then suddenly that Bardo ends, and then we can have another Bardo. Okay? Which is between one life on a gross body and the rebirth on a gross body is part of the same Bardo. But actually, technically, it's many small Bardos, up to 7 small Bardos that we can live. It's up to 7 small realities. That's why we make the specific prayers for the person every 7 days of the death. Because every 7 days is the end of one life of the Bardo. So that's the moment in which there is a small death in the Bardo and the person can actually retake another birth of the Bardo. And there is one very important thing, which is the form of the Bardo will determine the type of rebirth. Okay? Because basically, in the Bardo, if I have a Bardo for being reborn as a human being, I can see human beings. I can see the reality of a human being, I see myself as a human being. If I am reborn in a Bardo as an animal, what happens to that is that naturally I will have the body, during the Bardo, I will see myself as the animal of the Bardo that I am. And this will bring me to have attraction and aversion to the type of animals in which I am the Bardo and bring me to that type of rebirth. Okay? So the type of Bardo determines the type of birth that we will have. That's why it's important every small death of the Bardo to make a change in order to have a better Bardo in this way. And the first Bardo is determined by the way how we die, the state of mind in which we die. This is going to determine the first part of the Bardo. Okay? So, it's like if we take the same metaphor that we did before of the job, I finish one work and then suddenly I have opportunities of job, and I have one opportunity. I have for 1 week time I can choose one job, but I can only choose job as a cook. I can choose go to work in different restaurants in different ways, but I can only be a cook. Then I lose the opportunity of being a cook and I get a new opportunity. Now I can work in an office of a lawyer. But then I can choose different offices of lawyers and so on, but I cannot choose to be a cook anymore at that moment. And like this, and I can go to different opportunities. But the last one, then we must make a choice. There is no way of going through another one again. That's why it says that we can have different Bardos within one. Each one of them can last, like different lives of a Bardo, and each one can last normally up to 7 of our days. And in the last Bardo, which is the end of the 49 days, then there is no any more choice. Then we are forced to take one or another rebirth within that state in which we are. So, one other aspect of the being of the Bardo is that it says that when the being of the Bardo is able to move from one place to the other as fast as he's able to think. So you think about one place, you are on that place right away. Which looks nice, but imagine to have this without having control of one's own mind. Not so nice, actually. But this This is one of the reasons also why it is given so much importance to make pilgrimage to holy places, to create strong connection to special places. Because if I go to a place which is a sacred place, and I make a special connection to that place, and that connection is directly connected to a state of love, of peace, of joy, of faith, or something that is connected to what is pure and sacred and positive. For example, for us, whenever we think about Borobudur, what type of feeling it brings to us? Positive, no? There are places, maybe nature, maybe temples, maybe places which brings us automatically connect us to a positive feeling. The same thing is with people. Some people that when we remember them, naturally will bring us a positive state. So the more we have this strong connection with what is positive during our life, the more in the Bardo I can remember that place, and then will bring me directly to there. Okay? It is like, and this will bring me to have a better rebirth. It's also like, for example, during dream time, I know many people that they have learned, like during the dreams, they have got so used to recite mantras that in the middle of the dream they take refuge or they start reciting the mantras and things like that. This is a very positive sign, actually. Okay? So, also there is one text which was written by one great master he came to Italy in the beginning of the 60s. So his name was Geshe Champel Senghe. Was a very important master for Italy, actually. And I was just imagining what would be to come to Italy almost directly from Tibet, before 59 Tibet, directly to Rome and Naples. No, it would be the same if it was Milan or Verbania, actually, but just to say, like, out of Tibet, he was one of the most respected Geshes in Tibet, and suddenly here he was sent in Italy. Quite shocking experience, I would believe. Especially because it's such a different culture, and then no one was around to support, and so on, no? And Geshe Champel Senghe, short time after, he gave up the monastic vows, and he said, sorry, here it's impossible to keep it. There is no the context to keep correctly the vows. So, anyhow, and after he was married, he had a daughter, and then and he was teaching in the university. But there is a book by Geshe Champel Senghe, which is called, in Italian, Death, Dream and Rebirth, something like this. And it's a very nice book, talking about the process of the Bardo and the death and so on. And in this book, he explains something in a very nice way. He says, some people may wonder, how can the guru help them when they die because they think their guru is too busy? So they are worried that their guru is too busy all around. So, okay, in the moment that I die, how is my guru going to be able, to come there and help me in the moment that I am dying? He's going to be too busy somewhere doing something, and he's not going to be able to help me. Or if my guru passed away before me, how can he come to help me at that moment? Okay. There are different levels how this is possible. But one of the ways that he was explaining, he was saying one of the ways is that actually when we create a deep connection of faith, of gratitude, of love, of connection to someone, and in the moment that we die, we connect ourselves to that person, or in the Bardo, for example, naturally that connection by itself, that memory by itself, which brings us to that connection, will automatically guide us to a better rebirth. It's the same thing as connecting to the pure, to the holy places. Okay? So this is the important to create such a positive connection. Then there is the other aspect, which is when the person is in the Bardo, one of the specific characteristics is that the person communicates through the mind and not through verbal words. Even when we are dreaming, we communicate through the mind. It's like we can talk to each other in the dream. Not necessarily we need to listen to the sound. We know what the other is saying. I have had many experiences like this, no? So what is said is that when someone has passed away, and especially if we have a connection with that person, by making our prayers, by thinking about the person, by talking to the person, with our mind and thoughts and so on, we can communicate with a person. And a person have two ways of receiving that. One is a way with awareness. Oh, look, that person there is talking to me. And another way is just receive a positive influence of love and so on without necessarily knowing exactly where it is coming from and what is happening. Okay? But there is this positive influence. So from that point of view also, a person that has some more higher realizations is possible also to guide someone in the Bardo. This is also possible, technically speaking. Okay? Another aspect of the Bardo is that the being of the Bardo is called in Tibetan also Trisa. Tri means smell, Sa means to eat. So are smell eaters. It's said that the being of the Bardo nourishes himself through smell. That's why there is a tradition in Tibet, for example, of making offerings to the Bardo beings as an act of generosity, and there is a specific practice called Sur, in which is made a mixture of some incense powder together with tsampa mainly, which is the like barley, no, and butter, and this is burned, and it makes this smell of Tibetan food basically, which is barley, roasted barley with butter, no, and this is a way of offering this to the being that is in the Bardo. Rinpoche wanted to teach us, he taught us one time this practice, but we never made a sadhana in English or Italian with it, phonetics and so on. There is some meditation and mantras to recite for that. My teacher in Tibet, for example, he does it every day. Every morning he's making this in order to, it's an act of generosity to help the beings that are in the Bardo. There is also the tradition of making this when a person that we love or near to us pass away, make this offering every day. Rinpoche other day was telling me about one Lama, which was I think Kuno Lama Rinpoche, something like this, a very important Lama that passed away, and before dying, he died in the most conscious way, and before dying he called his disciples, he had a nice shower, he came back, he called his disciples, then he took the tape recorder, he recorded his testament, what he wanted to do for one and for the other, we gave all the instructions about his next life, about what should be done here and there and so on. He recorded everything. Then he asked them to bring one incense burner, to bring the substance that is given for the Bardo beans, and then he put 49 times with the dedication for the 49 days of the Bardo for himself, because he said his disciples, maybe they didn't know how to do well, they were not doing it, so he just did for himself before he did 49 times, and then he went to his room, and then he passed away. So there are some examples of this, but it's just to say that to make this offering, even this Lama, he did it for himself, preparing for his own death after. So there is a tradition of offering this. This is so showing that these beings, they are nourished by smell. So even, for example, when we cook, we can offer this to the Bardo beings also, the food, the smell of the food that we have and so on. This is also something that is possible. This connects us to another aspect, which I just make a small bracket in between, which is the beings that are nourished by smell are not only Bardo beings. There are different beings that don't have a physical body, and they are nourished by smell. So depending on the type of smells, we can attract one type of beings or another type of beings. Okay, this is one of the reasons why it is said that is certain types of smells which is normally connected mainly to alcohol and cigarette and tobacco and so on. This actually influences this type of beings that brings a negative influence. So basically here there are two aspects which is important to be aware of. One is that the more we have a dependence on something, the more we are addicted to something, the more we become weak of our own will, and the more we are easily influenced by others. Okay? So this any type of, not dependence, what do you call it, of addiction. Any type of addiction, the stronger is the addiction, the stronger it takes away our own willpower. It takes away our own strength. And by having a strong addiction, we become more, how do you say in English, suscettibile, susceptible susceptible for influences by others, okay? By the presence and so on, and especially by negative influence somehow. So what happened to that is that what it said is that the use of alcohol and the use of tobacco and drugs, generally speaking, they not only they make the person more weak, because creates this addiction, makes the person weak, at the same time it attracts the type of spirits that make negative influences. Okay? And one interesting thing, just in between, is that talking to people that know like the ancient tradition from the Andes and from the Amazon forest and so on, areas from which originally plants that we use nowadays for drugs actually came from. And it's interesting that all these plants, for example, the tobacco, the marijuana, the cocaine, the opio, are all actually sacred plants originally. And these plants, they have been used for healing, and they have been used in a very sacred way for centuries and thousands of years actually. But in these old traditions, they had a very clear saying, which was, this is not something new, it's something very old. They said, if these master plants, if these holy plants are used in a wrong way, they will turn against the person that is using it. They will turn against. So this is what we see very often. We see plants that were being used originally as holy plants for healing, being used in a complete different way, like abusing the plant. And when you abuse the plant turns against you. And this is something that actually we can see very clear that is happening a lot. Okay? And I just take and open the opportunity just to touch one point, which is something that many people still don't see. But one of the plants, which is not only one plant, but together, that it's being gradually more and more abused, and by being abused, it will bring negative results, as we have seen already with different plants, is the use of ayahuasca. It's a plant that here in Italy is not so common, but like in Brazil, it's much more common, and which is a plant that is used in a sacred way to help the person spiritually and for healing and so on, but is used in a very specific context. And when people start to abuse out of it, it starts to turn against us. Okay? So this is just an opportunity just to say this aspect, which need to be very careful with that. There are some things we can play with, some things we cannot play with. Okay? And we see in our society very clear examples of that. There are some things we are not supposed to play with. Okay? Anyhow, together with that, which doesn't mean that these things by their own nature are negative, but if they are used in one way, they will bring that type of results. That's the only thing I want to bring about it, okay? So, this type of plants, they were used and they are still used in some contexts specifically as for healing. But people use in a form of recreation, in a form of complete different use, and abuse the plant, and then it brings a lot of harm, okay? But this is not something new. It's something that since the old times, these people, they knew that if you use in a wrong way, it will bring negative results. And by using this in a wrong way, and this is the type of plants that also, like this, the alcohol, which is a different thing, but alcohol and also the use of tobacco and so on, it says that it brings the influence of negative types of spirits, that brings negative influence to us. This is one of the reasons why we say that there are some environments where to keep the environment pure, it's requested not to smoke in that environment. It's not a matter of the environment from the gross level of the smoke of the cigarette, of the smell of the cigarette and so on. It's a matter of the environment from the subtle point of view of the beings that are living in that environment. There are some type of beings which brings positive influence, that they like some types of smells and they don't like other types of smells. Okay? So because of that, that's one of the reasons why, for example, through incense we purify the environment. Because it's said that some type of plants and some types which is used to make incense, the composition of Tibetan incense is made with the awareness of this. Okay? It's made with the awareness of what type of smell, what type of beings like this type of smell. So I want to get more influence from that type of beings, I need to put that type of smell. This is something that is coming from this knowledge that is also within the Tibetan way of making incense, okay? So this is a way in which we bring this influence also to us. So normally when we say about the fact of the places where there is a lot of use of alcohol, of drugs, of addictions in generally, and of cigarette, it's a type of influence that it creates of the beings that come there, which creates the influence that it brings is the influence of aggression. It brings the influence of depression, okay, fear, and so on. So this is something that we don't want, so it's better not to keep this. And that's also why we request some places to be kept protected from this type of influence, okay? Especially when we talk about holy places and so on, and hopefully our own home also. Okay, hopefully everywhere, but at least some places we need to protect in this sense. So we bring negative influence to us. This was just, I take the opportunity just to give this explanation because I think it's also important. When we say, okay, it's not good to smoke and to have an excessive use of alcohol and so on, it's not to do only with health. It has to do with character. It has to do with self-esteem. It has to do with our ability to keep not to be influenced by others, and it has to do with energy, with attracting negative energy or keeping away negative energy and so on. It has to do a lot with all of this. Okay? So I just take the opportunity to touch this subject briefly. Okay? So, the Bardo nourishes, this being of the Bardo nourishes himself from smell, can go anywhere, doesn't have barriers like walls or mountains, can go through every place. At the same time, this means that if has the awareness, can go to Tushita, can go here, can go anywhere, okay? To Pure Lands, huh? There is only one universe, there is only one existence with many places. It's not like the Bardo is not, okay, you are from planet Earth, so your Bardo is inside here. Okay? It is much more wide, actually, what is possible. And the Bardo beings travels from one place to the other as fast as the mind. Okay? So, the important thing for us to understand here is that the way how we will experience the Bardo is a reflect, first of all, of the way how we die, of the state of our mind. And depending on the state of the Bardo, it will condition the type of rebirth that we can have. Okay? So it is very important for us to have a good Bardo and to deal positively with our Bardo. One of the most important things would be to be aware that a Bardo is a Bardo. That would be very important. And to do that, one of the ways is to train to be aware that a dream is a dream. The more we are aware that we are dreaming as we dream, this is a way of training ourselves to be aware that a Bardo is a Bardo. Okay? And when we do that, then we can choose to which direction to go. And in a way in which we are aware. One of the questions that came was, also, why do we say, please liberate me from the narrow and terrifying, fearful passage of the Bardo? The Bardo doesn't need necessarily to be fearful and narrow and difficult, okay? But this prayer is like saying, I'm falling asleep, please protect me from nightmares. I can have nightmares, but not necessarily I will have a nightmare. But the difference is that if I have a nightmare, it will bring me to a bad waking up. If I have a nightmare as a Bardo, most probably it will bring me to a negative rebirth. So what happened is that, please protect me from the narrow and fearful Bardo. May I have a positive Bardo that brings me to a positive rebirth. So the Bardo not necessarily needs to be something bad, something fearful, something of suffering. We can have a wonderful Bardo also, just as we can have a wonderful dream. Okay? But it's like in the Bardo, we are disconnected from, not necessarily, but most of the times we are disconnected from the things that have happened in the life before. It's just like waking up in a dream that is disconnected from the state as we were awake when we fell asleep. Okay? But we can also be influenced. It's like when we are sleeping, even though we go into a dream that is disconnected from our life when we are awake, we are still the ones that are dreaming. And we are still influenced by our experiences, by our emotions, by our character and all of this. Similar to that, in the Bardo, we are the ones experiencing the Bardo. And at the same time, we are totally influenced by all the experiences we had during our life and so on. We are in the same continuity. Okay? The dream and the Bardo are very similar states, but they are not the same. Okay? Remember, whatever is similar by definition is different. But there are many aspects between dream and Bardo that are very, very similar. So we can train for the Bardo by training in the dream. We will see this later today and tomorrow. And we can also understand better the Bardo by understand better the state of dreaming. Okay? So, just to conclude, the important thing is for us at the same time to understand that the way how we will experience the Bardo is directly connected to the way how we live our life now. Not from the point of view of what I do, which job I make, where I am, but internally the way how we are. It's just as when we are dreaming, the inner state, the way how we dream, the way how we relate to situations is the way how we are normally when we are not dreaming. No? I cannot talk about others. I need to talk about my own experience. So for example, I have one quality, let's say. I have many defects also, but one quality, which is the quality of whenever there is a situation of difficulty of anything, I always have the sensation and the certainty I will find a solution. There's always this idea, this feeling, okay, it doesn't matter what happens, the solution will be fine, no problem, no? We find a solution, we will deal with it, it will be fine. And in the dreams I have exactly the same. Even though I have a bad dream that sometimes may happen, I always in the dream when something negative is happening, I always have this sensation, okay, but I will find a solution. And most of the times, like 99% of the times, even more than that, I end up the dream with the solution. So I never end up the dream in a sensation of fear or difficulty and so on. So it's always a good dream, even if it was a bad dream originally, no? But I believe that this is happening only because I have this aspect normally of always looking for a solution and finding a positive way how to deal with the situation. So this is just to say, it's one aspect. Then we have many other aspects, no? Positive and negative. But the way how we dream reflects the way how we are when we are not dreaming, in a deeper level. Similar way, the way how we are going to experience the Bardo that we will enter is a reflection of the way how we live now. If now I live in a state of peace, of joy, of harmony, most probably I will have a peaceful, joyful, harmonious Bardo. Because the way how I live will also determine the way how I die internally. And the way how I die will determine the way of the Bardo, and the way of the Bardo will determine the way of rebirth. So we don't need to fear Bardo as something that is by its nature negative, and it's not necessarily like that. We need to fear to live in a negative way, that this will bring us to a difficult death, that will bring us to a difficult Bardo. So basically it's all starting from where we are right now, and this is what is going to influence, because even though in the Bardo I may not remember of my name, I may not remember of my body and the place where I come from and so on, it's still me that I am experiencing that. In a different context, different way, but it's always me with the deepest aspects of myself being brought on. Okay? So basically, I personally believe there is no much need to fear the Bardo. We need to fear an incoherent negative life. That's what we need to fear. Okay? That's the most important thing. Quindi per concludere solo, and now we stop here for lunch. I wanted to explain the process of rebirth, but we do that after lunch, otherwise we need to do in a hurry, and we do after lunch. Jetsun lame kutse rapten chi namkar tinle chochur gepa dang losan tempe dreme sas drove munsel taltu ne gyurch nimo dele tsendele nime kuyan delek shin ninsen taktu delek pe koncho sumke jinge lob koncho sumge ngodru butsol, koncho sumge trashisho. At dawn or dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness.